Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Of course, I am your host, DBJ, and this is the station for the imagination. All of you out there, thank you very much for joining me now and or later on. If you cannot join the show, for those who do not know, this show is TriCast over Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. So if you want to be part of the show in any or some of those manners, you may do so as well. And additionally, the show is we do a long form kind of discussion, and we're talking about clerics in traditional tabletop RPGs. Of course, traditional being the most popular role-playing game in the world, which is Dungeons and Dragons, and we're talking about clerics, kind of breaking them apart, twisting them around. But on this Thursday, this is something I hold really close to my heart, and I feel like it's a muscle that's been atrophied for so long that we've kind of ignored it, but it's something that I absolutely love. As a matter of fact, I'm like 9 books deep into writing about it, and it's about the third pillar of exploration. It's about the exploration pillar of gaming, with, of course, combat and social interaction representing the other 2 pillars. And it's more, for me, it's far more than just like walking into dusty dungeons and whatnot. It's about exploring and even mechanically having the environment have an effect in the game. Jarl, I think somebody's got your goat there. Okay, so by the way, the Jarl DM and others who are part of the channel, please check out any and all things that they do. They are content creators. I kind of think far better than I am. Oh man. Oh, you're so funny. Yep. Anyway, so the Jarl DM said, oh, by the way, good morning, everyone. Hey, Cam, what's going on? Tesla, Deadman's here. All right, thank you, guys. Anyway, Jarl DM says, just some world building thoughts. Because, since I've had to cut the time down, it feels sometimes like all the really creative stuff gets backed up on the channel. So I hear you. Anyway, he says, Jarl DM says, yeah, some reference to clerics before my brain squirrels off. If there are many clerics and they serve various gods, harvest would be very reliable through the use of spells. Oh, yeah, unfortunately. The rich and powerful would likely be immortal, healed of all sicknesses and injuries, raised even from death. Just had to get that out of my brain. You know what? We have to do a whole like what is it, like the apocalypse of magic, basically. What's the book? I know you know it off the top of your head there, Jarl DM. The industrial, what's the book that came out that was produced where it's like it's a bunch of scenarios. Yeah. It's a bunch of scenarios listing some of the things we take for granted in role-playing games. Yeah, magical industrial revolution. Yep, that's it. And it takes a bunch of things, everything from like, I don't know, like teleportation to healing and whatnot, and extrapolates out what horrible things would happen if you had something like, I don't know, create food and water, or remove disease, or so on and so forth. And it's pretty funny, and I love thinking about things like that. And I would love to play in it would be pretty interesting to have a setting where those things are happening and you're role playing within the moments where society gets that tipping point. I think it would be pretty amazing and pretty bonkers, but I would love it. Oh, you listen to the Jurassic Park audiobook. Okay, all right. The original. Okay. So naturally, I'm now thinking of clerics raising fossils out of tar pits. Ooh. I like that idea. Tar covered dinosaurs rising out of the pits, bones reassembling from thousands of years ago or whatever. Yeah, yeah. All DMs like polymorph, turning rats into cows to feed everyone, and gout becomes a sickness of the poor. Scrying is watched at all times. It's such a cool book. Yeah. Oh, hell's yes. Um, yeah. So we'll have to do a whole week of that. We'll definitely have to do that. And shit, you could pick each part. You could start to go through everything in Dungeons and Dragons, and just pick like we're going to do an apocalypse of magic missile. We're going to do an apocalypse of laying on hands. You're like, oh my goodness. Well, we'll figure something out. Heck, we might even do an apocalypse for this next week. All right, so here are we got to narrow this down. So exploration. How do I feel about this? Well, um, I'm looking at this from 3 points of view. I think for exploration. So one is that we just like in our own society, we hear of like societies rising and falling, and I could imagine clerics doing the traditional, being like the traditional traveling out into the unknown world to uncover lost civilizations. The reason being is because the gods you have today have literally crushed other civilizations to nothing, eradicated them from history, and then the people are looking around like, what? Weren't there people who used to do these other things? And everyone's like, I don't remember any of that at all. And it's like, but wasn't it last week? Like much like the dark ages of burning books of knowledge and things like that, I could imagine there would be a number of layers of different civilizations all spread around, crushed under the heel of not progress but faith. Because if there's a god, let's do the apocalypse thing, right? If there's a god of healing, maybe, and you could play this two different ways, but the apocalyptic version is a god of healing might not want you to, I don't know, have medicine, right? It's like, no, 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 no. Don't learn medicine and herbalism on your own. I'm giving you the power to heal, and please keep doing that, because that way you'll worship me. And other people are like, you do realize we got plants over here that have the same function. And and the healing god is like, you will burn those plants. I'm telling you, they're evil. And everyone's like, no, they're not. Isn't that aloe? Like, I burned my finger. I could just put the aloe plant on me. And they're like, and it is, so I could imagine there being like multiples of different types of godlings in their domains, and they're going like, no, don't do that on your own. Use my power because I'm the best. So that's one way of doing it. The second way I'm thinking about it is, why can't we just embrace the idea? Okay, usually this is done past tense. The gods did battle, and one of the gods have died, and then the gods fell to the earth, and blah, blah, blah. This is all in the past history, right? And then the player characters are like, okay, so now you're adventuring, and you're looking around, and it's like, okay, all that stuff happened in the past. Why can't we happen present tense? Like, why can't we have the gods doing battle overhead, throwing like bolts of necrotic lightning bolts at each other, and another one swinging their sword and slashing across a great, Tiamat, who's like as large as the largest mountains, blasting cold and fire and acid at some, I don't know, hero or something that's like literally stepping over mountaintops and doing battle, and the human beings are living in and amongst it. They're not even ants. They're like specks of dust below the gods, and living in a world where it's not a matter of like, oh, we've got to watch out for snowstorms or hurricanes or earthquakes or something, but literally they can see one of the gods getting punched in the face, and then when that godling stumbles back and lands their knee on the ground as they try to recover, that becomes the earthquake. It shatters a mountain, and the PCs have to worry about that. Or like, that godling got their arm slashed. We better watch out for acid rain, and you've got to run for it. Like, I think that would be a cool, a very immersive background to play in, and needing to navigate around a world where um, the gods are literally doing battle overhead, and this post-apocalyptic world where people are trying to hide in the crevices of the earth so that they don't die because of these chaotic storms and things that pass overhead. And they don't need to be humanoid at all. It could just be, the gods have done battle and they've scarred the world and tilted it, and everything's terrible and things happen randomly, and be careful, right? Or it could be, the last bastions of faith are doing battle with each other, and they're doing it overhead and underground and in the sky and blah blah blah. And there's only little moments of reprieve before they go back at it again. I think that would just be amazing. Heck, you can even have the classic. I'll get into the chat in a minute. You can even have a classic like, hey, let's have an adventure inside the dead monster, and you're running around inside the dead monster's gullet and things like that. The lungs being like a cave that collapses and like expands and collapses, and could even crush you when it collapses, expands super large when it inhales, and then there's like winds inside or something. White blood cells being like oozes or even other monsters or something. Anyway, so Jarl DM says, magic in many ways prohibits and cancels out progress. Why would you dedicate yourself, to the science of learning how to heal when people can do it in 6 seconds with a spell? Well, I would now. A, I agree with you. B, that would depend on how. It would depend on the utility of it, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons makes it literally an on-off switch. It's not even magic anymore. It's more of a science of magic, because it's absolutely reliable. But that would depend on how many people can learn it, like how many people would need to be brilliant enough to learn it. How long would it take to master the ability to learn to heal, or how much faith, like how devoted of a faith do you have to have it? So much like today, where we have like Olympic athletes, and sure, like 30% of the population could become Olympic level, but we don't do it because we're too busy doing other things. There is a possibility that it's just too rare. There are people who can do incredible things, but most of us can't. So it would depend on that, which is, I think that's where Dungeons and Dragons kind of sits at. They kind of hint like, most people could do this, but most people can't. So it wouldn't become that widespread. At least that's where I think they're trying to default at. But on the other hand, I do agree with you, right? Like if it only takes like 6 months to learn how to heal, people would be reading books to heal each other, right? But if it takes 12 years to do it, that's a lot of time, energy, and resources to learn how to do something simple, rather than like taking a bandage and setting your bone and going about your business. Cam says some religious exploration goals could be such as visiting a church for a boon. Yep. I love it. Seeking out a lost temple to recover religious artifacts. Find an isolated settlement devoted to your god and other stuff. I love it. No, I'm dude. I'm right there with you, because clerics have like a built-in. Clerics, warlocks, paladins, right? They have a built-in goal already in the character type that's easy. You can't come up with an idea, go, well, your godling, you got a message from an avatar. You've got an instruction or a message from someone higher up. One of the faithful is asking you to do a thing. Like it's built-in story right there. Hey, you got a holy symbol. I need you to help me, please. And then boop, 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 off we go, and you just fill in the blanks, right? Keeping certain artifacts, uncovering the artifacts, protecting them when you're traveling, educating a population, going into a small village to bring your faith into the village, or reunite a lost tribe or something, whatever the case may be. There's just story built right into those character types, and I love it. I mean, heck, it might just even be you need to protect a monument that's being erected to the god or something, and there's people that are trying to tear it down, and your job is just to sit there and protect it or whatnot, you know. Um, your LDM says a god's arm is severed and falls, and its blood turns into a brutal desert, into the most verdant place on earth. Let me start that over again. Okay, all right. A god's arm is severed and falls, and its blood turns a brutal desert into the most verdant place on earth overnight, turning the desert nomads into the richest people in the world. Unless, yes, I don't know how much the camels would appreciate that, because they're just like, we used to be the top of the food chain. Everybody loved us. Now that no one's riding our back helps. Yeah, but yes, it that is. Could you imagine that happening? How I think that would just be sweet. PCs cross the mountain valley to get to the other side. There's this massive desert in front of them. It's like snow. I mean, sandstorms and like blistering heat, and there's quicksand, and they're all prepped, and then all of a sudden they look up in the sky, and there's like this blade just chops into this arm, and you can see like the arm falling through the clouds as like the clouds break against the arm, and then the arm just like slams into the ground, and then all of a sudden, like literally before their eyes, as they're walking through the desert, they can see like plants reaching up out of the ground, and the blood is running like rivers, like literal rivers and whatnot. That would just be sweet. And now all of a sudden they're like, does that mean we have to put down all that water that we brought with us and and like rearrange ourselves? I just love that. I love the visual, and I would love to play in a game where those are the things that you have to worry about. Like the PCs come through the mountain, then they look back and they see a big footstep stamp down on the mountain and crush it in the dust. And they're like, holy shit, right? Yeah. At a third level druid can cast Goodberry 4 times a day. That's 40 people fully fed for a day through 24 seconds of work. You know what? Could you imagine like people like you see the Goodberry people that's like you their mouths and their fingers are stained with the berries and whatnot, and there's like Goodberry bushes that they're all eating like Goodberry pastries and like Goodberry wine. And yeah, Deadman says, then you create a dependency on that one druid. What happens if he decides he wants a day off? See, that's my contention, right? Like we assume that the people doing this are robots. Like, what happens if they're like, I don't really feel like it, or they start to the people that are able to create these magical effects like clerics healing or creating food and water or druids creating good berry. Like what happens if they start making demands of the population, extracting favors of ill-gotten gains? And we don't Dungeons and Dragons is weird because there are narrative limitations, but there's no mechanical limitation on like a druid creating Goodberry all day long, right? So why is it that the gods would not step in to stop something like that? And I think even that's a great story. Like, could you imagine like the druids are creating good berries all day long, and there's another druidic tribe like, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to kill them, right? Like why would they be allowed to do it? And I'm being facetious in the fact that if it is like I'm considering it is really happening now, what would be the reason why? Like, have the gods lost control? Is this weird loophole in their power that they really can't stop it? I think that would be awesome too. Yeah, your LDM says you can do 24 seconds of work on a day off. It leaves 40 people free to work on anything else. Yeah, the amount of time we spend trying to secure food, especially in the pre-modern period, is staggering. Oh, could you? How about just feeding an army? Could you imagine what Goodberry, create food and water? What's the other one? Purify. Isn't there one that used? Well, maybe I'm a little grognard. There was one called Purify Food and Water. Like, could you imagine the military might of an army when they're all carrying around sacks of good berries? Like that would just be just simply they wouldn't need to be they wouldn't need to be skilled better, but their military might would be so staggering because they would be healthy, right? How much time would they have to train if all they have to do is pop some food and go about their business? Wow. Because taking care of an army, like for every soldier, wasn't there some statistic? I don't remember where I saw this, but I heard some statistic that historically it took between 5 and 20 non-combatants to support every single soldier. In history, it's something like that. It's something weird and staggering like that, but that's awesome though. So clerics, well, druids are kind of thrown in there, right? Like a cleric is such a um force multiplier that we don't even think about it. Yeah, Jarl DM says, yeah, in Iscloth, the number is 30 villagers for one Huskarl, the professional warrior. Yeah, because food, weapons, clothing, shelter, training, um, all of that. It takes so many people to support an army. One military soldier is crazy. Um, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going back up in the chat. So, Jarl DM says, "Ooh, that's totally the point, though. Though magical power, through magical power, you can absolutely dominate a whole world. Again, the implications of a single spell can break a world if you think about it even a little. Yeah, and I love thinking about it." Cam says, "Yeah, right. Religious characters come with related locations, a home base, politics. Yep, united goals." Moral obligations, contacts, underlings, higher ups, the ultimate higher up, and something to die for. Yeah, and that gets complicated too, right? Like, what if you're instructed to do something you find morally reprehensible? Or what if you're doing something that other people find morally reprehensible? What if you, as a PC cleric, are like, I'm just going to go adventuring. And all of a sudden now you've got like um, younglings underneath you that you've got to take care of, and you're like, I don't want to take care of them. I'm out like beating ass and taking names and stuff. And the younglings are like, is that what we're supposed to do? Are we supposed to beat ass and take names and like and chew gum? And you're just like, oh god, they're watching me every second. Um, and plus, there's the as all religions, there's the what the book says, or and I'm saying book because sometimes this could be passed by history or words or meditation. So it's what the book says, and then it's the politics, and sometimes even that bumps up against each other, right? Yeah. Oh, man, I mean, it's built in. I'm with you, Cam. There's so many stories built in that we don't even we we kind of don't even think about. How about just tithing to the church, right? Like someone's got to collect the money or taxes. Someone has to ensure that that money goes to the proper location. And how many truly religious people have looked at their own religion hierarchy and found out the problems in there? It's crazy, but yep, yeah. Yeah, Jarl DM says, yeah, that's a first level spell as well. Goodberry. You could march without a baggage train. Your army would be fast. Hells yes. You wouldn't even have to destroy the. You wouldn't destroy the ecology either. You wouldn't have to hunt or like if you had good berries and what's the other one? Leomund's tiny hut. Those so many of those spells would just wipe out society because you wouldn't have to scavenge for food and all that kind of stuff in the environment. It's crazy. Cam says, I envy a DM who has the opportunity to run a game for a party united by their religion. You know what? And it's weird because we're talking about clerics right now, but like the unified theme within a group is always it always makes a better gaming session when everyone is united. Now, inwardly, people can have infighting, but like the knight errants are a great idea. The bardic troupe, who are musicians moving around, or like those united fronts, I think are excellent. And having a party united by a religion, I think that just makes sense. Not it's weird how it sounds unique because very few people do it, but I feel like it should be a staple. I almost feel like Dungeons and Dragons has lost an opportunity to come up with various types of united gaming styles to layer into your gaming sessions. Like, we're all thieves and criminals. Boom. Everybody make a character of any class. Here's how they all fit together. We're all pirates. We're all like it makes perfect sense. Um, Y'all's going off. We're gonna have to do this, dude. Um, Yep, rules as written and rules as intended exist in religious dogma as much in D&D rule sets. It sure does. Yes. I'm looking at you, world religions. It's the idea of inviting in the unwanted and the unwashed into your pristine religious um locations, right? There are those who are like, we are going to feed the poor and the hungry and the drug addicted and the criminals. And then there's others who are like, we ain't inviting them in here. Keep those unwashed masses outside, right? How, to this day, we are still dealing with that, right? Tesla, quote, I came here to kick ass and turn undead, and I'm all out of undead. I love it. Oh man, Rowdy Roddy. Maybe not Piper, but could be the Piper. Could still be the Piper. Oh man, Rowdy Roddy parishioner. Y'all DMs talking about spells that would completely transform society. Okay, so he says move earth, mud to stone, fabricate. You could create a castle in a couple of hours with a few casters on your side. We only ever play games where we have a goal for. Oh, Jarl DMs talk about the United Front. Yeah, we only ever play games where we have a goal for the group. Playing as a house in Westeros, the crew of a longship makes a huge difference. A lot of games now have you start as a group with a goal. And Inspire, you're a cell of the ministry, and Band of Blades, your mercenary company, etc. I in my old age, I'm starting to really love role playing games that are hyper focused, right? Like in Band of Blades, the whole idea of Bands of Blades, it's not even like, oh, we're gonna play Band of Blades and we're just warriors in a war. No, it specifically states you're a band of in a mercenary company trying to get back home, and the trials and tribulations of trying to get your way back home. It's so focused. I love it because one thing, you guys know that I make this comment where I love to back myself into a corner, and the corner backing is that's weird. Anyway, the corner backing is this idea of, yes, you can take a plain white sheet of paper and say, hey, create something for me. But it's better if you go, hey, on this sheet of paper, you can only put an animal, you only have 3 colors, and it has to be something from Madagascar, right? Like, the more you focus your limitations, the more creative you have to be within that small scope. And it forces my creativity to get out of that corner that I'm in and still be creative and still have fun. And I love a unified front. And I think Clerics really fall into that group. And so I think some people mistakenly think like, oh, well, if we play an all cleric group, we all have to play Clerics. Hell no. A cleric definitely needs a scout, you know. Thanks, Cam. Cam's like, raise a hand like, I'll go with the lemur. Yeah. Oh, but listen, you could. Oh, you're hilarious, dude. But yeah, you could go with like, I need a. We're gonna find an old uh, abandoned monastery or something, right? So I need a scout, I need a bodyguard, I need a sage of some sort, someone who knows a lot about the location. I need a local. I need, there's so many. It's weird how we as role players look at a gaming set and we feel like the gaming set stops our creativity, right? Like a warlock and a cleric and a paladin, actually more, I would say nearly 99% of all other class types could all come from the same religious organization, consider themselves to be equals in that religious organization, but their outlooks are different, right? Like imagine a cleric. So you guys know my difference between a cleric and a warlock. A cleric starts out with faith, and a side effect is that they get power. The warlock is, I want the power. The side effect is having faith. So one person could be very devoted to their religion, and they're like, hey, you should come to, I'm being sarcastic here. Hey, you should come to church. Pfft, forget that. All right, next day, you should come to church. Pfft, whatever, I'm not doing that. And then one day, the person who's like, I'm not going to church, and their loved one, gets injured or something. They're like, and then they go to the church and they're like, please give me the power. Please heal them. I would do anything to, if you just heal my loved one. Boom, the loved one gets healed, and then the religion is like, okay, I did what you asked. You owe me. Now that character becomes the warlock next to the other character who is the cleric, both of the same religion with the same goals and everything. Why wouldn't that be the case, right? And of course, a fighter and a paladin could both equally feel that they are exactly the same. One truly has an oath that they hold to for their religion. The other one's like, I I don't necessarily hold tight to the oath, but I sure will defend it to my death, right? The fighter doesn't necessarily need to have an oath, but why can't you play a fighter that has a paladin's oath? There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Jarl Diem says, in Jeremy's Erasmus Expeditions, by the way, go to Erasmus Expeditions on YouTube, as well as Jarl Diem's YouTube channel and Red Dice Diaries and a bunch of dudes that pop in and out of here. But anyway, yes, Erasmus Expeditions is an excellent YouTube channel you should check out. Lots of actual plays. Anyway, Jarl Diem says, in Jeremy's Erasmus Expeditions game, I played a cleric that slowly brought the jaded rogue towards the spiritual connection and prayers to the gods they felt had abandoned them. And I love that. I feel like mechanically, it would make probably sense in what you're talking about for a rogue to maybe get a level multi-class and get a level of cleric, or the dungeon master goes, you know what, rogue, when you level up, I'll give you the option of not picking a certain roguish trait, but instead you can pick, say, a clerical, like something from the clerics list or something. Like, I would allow that. Why not? Or maybe they just get a simple boon, right? Like, no magic items, you don't get any treasure, but you get this other thing. Or maybe their inspiration die is expressed in a different way. Like, okay, I'm going to give you an inspiration die, but, or you can spend the inspiration die to do a cleric spell cantrip. You get one cleric spell cantrip, and that's it. Like something like that. It makes perfect sense for growth that way, even though it may not, air quotes, make sense for the rogue at that level to pick a level of cleric. I think it makes perfect sense, and I love that idea. And why couldn't you play a religious rogue? Right? Someone, maybe they were a criminal. They still have their criminal background, but they're devoted to a cause. You could make the case that rangers and rogues represent the people who do the thing that they don't want other people doing to support their religion. Like, yeah, of course I torture and murder people because I am martyring my own soul so that others don't have to do the thing, right? And yes, there are many people who murder and kill and assassinate and sneak behind and hide and lie and deceive and sabotage in the name of their gods, right? We have that in our real world, so why wouldn't that be in a Dungeons and Dragons game? So I love it. I love it a lot. There there are gods of like thievery, deception, yep, trickery, etc. too. I always imagine rogues with 20 amulets around their necks, one to each god, just in case. Yeah, just in case. Like, why are you walking around with it's the classic holding up the religious symbol to the vampire, and the person keeps pulling out a different religious symbol trying to keep the vampire away. I love it. Yep, like Cam said, rogues can always be investigators. Absolutely. For every criminal, aren't there like counterintelligence agents? Why a rogue makes a perfect counterintelligence agent for other criminal activities and whatnot. So I love it. Also, something must be said for, on one hand, there is some religions have a, you need to stay away from those other people because they're going to corrupt you, and then there's this idea of you need to go into the corrupted lands, but you can't bring the corruption back with you. So it's almost like a one-way trip kind of thing. Like, maybe other people in the faith look at you like you're wrong for doing a thing, right? But you're doing it for a greater goal. That happens a lot, right? So, also, we tend to uh, we tend to think of religions as being like, here's a big building and here's a book about them and here's stuff that we wear, but like gods of like thievery, deception. Um, what are some other things like religions can be secretive, they could be hidden away, they could have, uh, instead of thieves can't, maybe we're doing a little bit of world building here, right? Like thieves can't might not be a criminal thing, but it might be a hidden religious mechanism. Like here in the States we have masons, and it is considered, a lot of the information about Freemasons is supposed to be secretive. And if you become a Freemason, you're not, it's like, the first rule of Freemasonry is you don't talk about being a Freemason. I forget the female part of it. But anyway, yeah, secret handshakes or symbology, the conspiracies about looking at the United States money and the pyramid and the single eye on it and what it represents and whatnot. Religions can be the same way, where there are, it's like you're not part of the inner circle unless you can decipher certain riddles and secrets and whatnot. And I think that would be awesome. Like to 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 gain a level, both narratively and mechanically, you have to solve these puzzles to get to the inner circle. And once you get in the inner circle, they start like shaking your hand, like, ah, you found the key to get here. Okay, congratulations. Now you know you can't say anything to anyone else, and you're like, no, I got you, dude. Yo, you know. Your DM says there are gods of murder and darker things too. I think gods of wealth, haggling, good deals, gambling, etc., would also be morally questionable. Yeah, yeah. A god of serial killers. Oof, oof, ooh, man. Here's another thing that's before we get out of here, right? Here's another thing that I think we don't think about. Okay, so Dungeons and Dragons has a legacy of having a god, for the most part, represent each like humanoid and non-human sentient creature, right? So like Groom pretty much represents like the goblinoids, orcs specifically, but like a lot of the goblinoids. And you'll have like, there's, god of dragons, god of giants, gods of whatever, right? Why is there very little crossover? Now I get it. There's like, what is it, Myrmidon or whatever it is. There's a god that literally forged the dwarves. So of course the dwarves would be like, yeah, okay. And something has to be said for the choice of character classes. Like, yes, I'm a dwarf, but I can pick to worship other, I can be a clerical dwarf that picks other religions. So we get a choice in that. But why is there very little crossover? Like, why wouldn't minotaurs worship the same god of harvest that the humans do? Maybe even there might even be different imagery or names, but they're the same god. Like, why wouldn't there be a crossover? And then couldn't you then have minotaurs be an ally I'm picturing minotaurs and cows in my head for some reason, cloven hooved creatures. But anyway, so why wouldn't they be allies of one PC and an enemy of another PC? Right? Like maybe there's like a druid having an ally of some kind of like naturalistic godling, but then being an enemy of industry because another PC who's an artificer or artificer or artificer, whatever pronunciation you go with, they could be an enemy of the other PC, right? So, and then you can start to have, instead of like every encounter being battle combat, instead it could be, oh, I'm going to go deal with the Minotaurs because they want me to do this thing because we are of the same like mind, even though we kind of rub, we rub elbows, but we also have friction in other ways. Cameron says, what was that movie with Tom Hanks where he had long hair and solved a religious mystery? That character had an interesting relationship with God. Oh, you're talking about the you're talking about the Dan Brownism trope. Angels and Demons, the Da Vinci Code, Inferno. I think there might even be some others. I think that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jarl DM says pagan gods in our own history had many domains. I'm going to pronounce it Freya. In Norse mythology, is goddess of war, sex, magic, love, fertility, prophecy, hunting, and more. That's another thing we don't do in role-playing games. We usually go, oh, there's fire, so we're going to pick a fire god, and we make up like 30 different gods. But more or less, more often than not, the pagan gods help us solve a problem that we have dealing in our own daily lives. So they end up having, it's like, I'm the god of harvest and industry and love and luck, right? We often don't have pantheons of smaller numbers of godlings, but they represent a larger scope of what they are about, right? Like normally we default to something gameable rather than, because there really is a link between like the Norse mythology with Freya being a goddess of war, sex, magic, love, fertility, and prophecy and hunting. There is some like thin threads that tie all of that together. Like war and sex actually makes sense because you go to war and your warriors die, but you also need to rebuild that warrior culture. You need to give birth to the next generation of warriors. How many times have we seen the warrior, kiss their loved ones on the forehead and their children to know that they're going to go off in the war, and knowing that the babies are going to take over to become the next generation, right? Yep, like your LDM says, all the same God, but many faces of the same God. And hey, good, obligatory Game of Thrones reference: the many-faced God. So there, how many times have we seen wars battled over people who believe in the same God and are willing to commit genocide against somebody else for their belief in the exact same God? Could you imagine the God like pulling their hair out, like, "What are you doing?" Looking down from on high, like, "You stupid motherfucker! Like, what are you doing? I gave you healing powers and good berry and create food and water, and you decide to have genocide against each other. You're destroying my 10,000 hit points." Right? I mean, that's that's a realistic thing, and I think that would be kind of cool. Like players, let's go back to what Cam was talking about. Religious organizations tend to do things like go into diplomacy or first contact with an alien species. And when I say alien, like um, traveling across the ocean and meeting people who you've never met before and trying to translate things, i.e., Europeans coming to the States, right? Before it became the States, they came across an ocean and they had to communicate with people who were here, and they were, I was about to call them Protestants. Oh, About to call them pagans. Wow. Um, Parishioners. Wow, my brain. P, letter P. Anyway, pro- pilgrims. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, dead man. Thank you for reaching your hand. Thanks for reaching your hand up my rear end and moving my mouth. I appreciate it. I hope your hand isn't too brown. Your LDM says there is only one God, and his name is death. Yeah, gods of death. Lastly, since this is about exploration, how many times in mythology have we heard of heroes going to the worlds of the gods, right? Like going down into Hades itself, or traveling to Valhalla to fight on the eternal battlefields or something. Clerics absolutely fit into the spiritual travel, whether it literally is spiritual, like we're all going to meditate and go to some spiritual realm in our brains or dream world, or it could be the literal stepping through to another world. Even if you're like second level or third level, why couldn't a cleric be cleric and their allies be, it's necessary to take the little small mortal ants and give them a message and have to travel across the plains of hell, or into the celestial realms or any other known location to perform some kind of major act and go off into another world where things don't operate the way they normally do. So I love I think clerics are undersold, and I wish there was some more mechanical features, not more powerful, but little dials that you can twist and turn based on what they do. But I guess it would be very difficult to measure. We already get in fights with alignment and hit points and armor class and stuff. Trying to measure someone's faith is just going a little too far with it. So yeah, I get it. But anyway, guys, tomorrow is Future Friday, and you guys know what I mean with Future Friday. We talk about science fiction, and this time for Future Friday, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and where faith fits into artificial intelligence. Like, can an AI have faith? Is it just artificial? And where does religion fit into the far future? Often it isn't placed in there, but we've got Warhammer 40K to give us a lot of faith in there. So we're going to talk about that for tomorrow. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining in. Please like, share, subscribe, spread the channel. Spread the word. Oh, by the way, look down in the doobly-doo. You'll find out what I'm about. I'm also working on other projects with N-World and Onyx Path Publishing. So look forward to that coming out as well. So everybody, have a great day. Thank you very much for watching and being part of the show. I appreciate it. Have a great have a great one. I'll see you later. Bye. Come on, music. Pop on in. There we go.